Lord.
Okay. I'm going to call the meeting for APCD to order for December 14th. And roll call.
Supervisor Bennett. Here. Councilmember Brennan. Supervisor Foy. Here. Mayor Holden. Supervisor Long.
Here.
Now Mayor Morgan.
Here.
Supervisor Parks. Here. And Councilmember Sharkey. And Supervisor Zaragoza.
Here. And we have a quorum.
We do.
Okay, our next item is Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to have Mayor Morgan lead us in the pledge.
Everyone please stand. Put your hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor. And also number 4 is minutes, approval of the minutes.
Move the approval.
Second.
Any opposed? Okay, that passes. Agenda review. Any concerns or any modifications of the agenda?
No, there was just a revision to one of the items, but we'll discuss that under the item.
Okay, so we're okay there. Then board comments. Any comments by the board members? Seeing none. Okay. And regular agenda item number 7. This is the approval of appointment of Raymond Garcia to APCD District Advisory Committee.
I'd like to move the appointment of Ray Garcia, former mayor of Thousand Oaks and interested volunteer now.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's approved. And also, item number 8, we have approval appointment of David Scott Morse to the APCD Advisory.
I'd like to move that recommended action. I know Mr. Morris will be a great addition to that body.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that is passed. Number 9, we have a public hearing regarding adoption of proposed amendment to the Hearing Board Rule 112 and contents of petition, Rule 17, answers, and Rule 120, and notice of hearing for 123 findings, and the variance and the abatement order for Rule 124, and et cetera, et cetera. Michael?
Chair Zaragoza, members of the board. I'm
Okay, go ahead.
Mike Villegas, Air Pollution Control Officer. Just before I get started, I wanted to give you a little note that Mayor Miller, who decided not to seek re-election, declined to come today to have he wanted his award presented to him at the city council, this final city council, and we accommodated that. So.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for that.
This item is an update to our hearing board rules, and many of the changes are minor, but a few are substantive. One of our goals with these amendments is to more closely align our rules with state health and safety code and to streamline the process. First up, Rule 112, Contents of Petition. Staff is proposing to delete the requirement for an applicant to include the proposed order for a variance with their application. The applicant would still include the requested action and a description of the relief desired from the hearing board, but we would continue our current practice of having staff prepare the proposed order for the variance. This rule was adopted, 117 was adopted in 1969, and the purpose of the rule was unclear. We've talked to hearing board members, the hearing board council, our staff, and then nobody seems to know why the rule was actually included in the rule book. So we're proposing to delete it.
Good.
In Rule 120, it currently contains notice requirements to the case where the district's population was under 750,000 population, and it also contains requirements for the district as 750,000 or greater. So we're proposing to remove the outdated lower population provisions. We're also including notice requirements for 90-day variances, and which would be consistent with state health and safety code. These are the most significant revisions we have, and it's Rule 123. Currently, Rule 123 states that the hearing board must find, with respect to a variance, that continued operation is not likely to create an immediate threat or hazard to public safety. This has been a problem for diesel engines, as diesel particulate does not have a threshold below which there are no chronic health impacts. And just to put things in perspective, this came up when we were working with the city of Simi Valley. They needed to operate a diesel engine at their wastewater plant during power outages until they could purchase a new lower emission diesel engine. It also came up when the County of Ventura needed to operate a diesel engine until they could opt out of their ISO contract with Southern California Edison. We were able to issue those variances, but the hearing board was quite uncomfortable doing those. And to put things in perspective, this language was added in the 70s, and this predates ARB's finding that diesel particulate is an air contaminant and that there's no safe threshold for cancer effects. So what we're proposing to do is delete the word immediate in the sentence in question and replace it with the word acute. And we're going to be very clear that we're not including chronic health effects, which includes cancer, in that. We'll have a policy memo so that 20 years from now people can understand exactly why we did this subtle change. The hearing board has been requesting this amendment to resolve the issue for diesel engines, and this will clarify the provision is not related to chronic health effects. And once again, I want to also point out that we're going to have other provisions in the rule to protect public health. This includes the requirement for the source to mitigate emissions to the maximum extent feasible and not to create a public nuisance. This should allow variances for diesel engines where appropriate and still would be protective of public health. Now in Rule 23, the other major change is related to abatement orders. And this is where the district comes in and seeks an order curtailing operations or potentially even shutting down a facility. The first finding in question is rather odd, and it's not in State Health and Safety Code. It says that an order of abatement will not constitute a taking of property without due process. This is perplexing because the hearing board process in itself represents due process. We actually have a member of LA County Council on our advisory committee, and he said, yeah, you really need to take this out of your rule, and we concur. The second seems meaningless because whenever a source curtails operations, emissions are reduced, and there's this finding that says such a closing would not be without a corresponding benefit in reducing emissions, and that's going to occur anytime you have an abatement order. Neither of those findings are currently in State Health and Safety Code. Next up is Rule 124, and it has a section that specifies that penalties assessed would be assessed pursuant to EPA guidance on penalties for major facilities. And there's actually an issue there because anytime we assess penalties, we have to do it pursuant to State Health and Safety Code. Also, the EPA guidance can result in cases where penalties assessed under their guidance would exceed our authority under state law to assess penalties. And just to put things in perspective, the penalties under state law can be quite substantive, so we don't see it as being an issue. And lastly, to understand a little bit about this EPA guidance, it's for major sources, and the idea is it really applies to cases where there's been a nationwide court case or a consent decree. And really what it looks at is you do need an economist on staff because you're trying to determine the penalty to be equal to the amount of economic benefit the source received from not complying. Very difficult analysis to do, and we're proposing to delete that from our rule and stay consistent with State Health and Safety Code. Lastly, we just have a minor clarification in our Rule 126. That's all I have. I'll be happy to answer questions.
Michael, on that 123, the wording is just to comply with the state regulations. Is that correct?
On,
from the immediate to acute?
actually, that finding is not in state health and safety code. Initially, we had thought about removing the entire finding. The advisory committee was not comfortable with removing that. They kind of honed down on the issue of acute versus chronic and realizing we were having an issue strictly with cancer risk, so they just wanted to go with the term acute.
With acute, okay. Any additional questions of staff? Okay, this is a public hearing. I don't have any speaker cards. Is there anyone in the audience that'd like to speak on this item? Okay, having it, we'll close the public hearing, and what's the pleasure of the board? The motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? So that passes. Thank you. Item number 10 is approval of grants for lower emission for several agencies.
Yeah, it's a little confusing. Sorry about that. Chair Zaragoza, members of the board, I'm Stan Cowan, Air Quality Engineer. This is a request to provide 2 grants, school bus retrofit program. This reduces diesel particulate. We're proposing awards to the Mesa Union School District for 2 retrofits for an amount of up to $38,314, and to Moorpark Unified School District for 5 school buses up to an amount of $86,584. Both these grants cover the installation of the part and the part itself. In addition, there is an additional amount for electrical infrastructure, $5,050 for Mesa Union and $3,425 for electrical infrastructure for Moorpark. This infrastructure is used to regenerate the particulate filters so they can operate properly. Funding for these retrofits is available because we have excess funds from other projects that have been completed, including Pleasant Valley, Rio School District, and Fillmore. We've also fundings available from recent grants that are ongoing projects that were budgeted less than what they actually needed, and so there's some excess funding there. So if these retrofits are funded, the total number will be 130 diesel school particulate filters since 2005, and this counts for about 5 tons of particulate matter reductions through the year 2020. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions, staff? No?
Your Honor, I move I move the approval of staff's recommendation.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Stan. Item number 11, receive and file the unaudited 2009-10 year-end financial status report. Michael?
For fiscal year 2009-2010, the district reported an excess of actual operating revenue over expenditures in the amount of $744,500. The net savings was due to an increase in revenue and reduced expenses. Based on the final report, the actual revenue exceeded budgeted revenue due to our projected increases in fines and penalties, just as we predicted when we adopted the budget. The total operating expenditures were below adopted appropriations. There were savings in salaries and benefits, as any pay increases had been deferred. Well, we had savings of $279,000 in services and supplies that were primarily due to reduced expenditures in miscellaneous office supplies of $21,470. Business travel was reduced $25,458. Advertising and marketing came under at $53,500. Professional services at $56,300 under budget. Other equipment maintenance at $19,600 under budget, and finally outside printing came under budget by $12,900. And I just want to point out the numbers I just read into the record are the ones the auditor controller really wanted to see. In the board letter, they also included some of the services supplies related to the pass-through grants. Lastly, for fiscal year 2009-2010, the district received funds to administer the pass-through grants. The revenue and expenditures associated with these grants are always equivalent, including services and supplies and salaries. That's all I have. It's quite good news for the district again, and I'll be happy to take questions.
The good news, Michael. Thank you.
Very good.
Any questions?
I just want to compliment, I mean, Mike's done, I think, a really great job with our finances over the years, and as lots of agencies are going through a tough time, you've done a good job being proactive in advance, so really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I agree. You always balance this budget, you make it work, and I really appreciate all the hard work you do. It's some tough decisions you've had to do, but it really pays off in the end. Thank you.
Marks and then Morgan.
And I would just also like to compliment you on that, but also noting how much of a savings came just from not doing that extra salary increases.
Oh, absolutely.
That was huge.
It was.
I just like to congratulate you because what your predictions from last time today worked. And so someone made a good guesstimate of what would be fact, and it did.
It's a good roadmap, huh?
Yeah. We're going to face some challenges in the future. I just want you to be aware that as EPA continues to tighten the air quality standards, what happens is more and more counties in the United States become non-attainment. And since that grant pot stays the same, there's just more mouths to feed, and that could potentially impact us. Prop 26 is going to make it a little more difficult to increase fees, and so we will be facing some challenges in the future, but at least we've got a good starting point right now.
One good example of that is the, what would you call it, the ring in San Luis Obispo County, which was attainment. You would not think it wasn't. But they have that area that when they put the monitors up on the mountains and it picked up the ring that comes out of Monterey County and put them into, remember that
Yes.
little discussion we had? You couldn't figure their air quality violating because everyone should violate it, and they do.
Okay, this is receive and file. It's a pleasure of the board.
Move the action.
All in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? Thank you, Michael. The number 12 is receive and file the final report on implementation and operation of a transit outreach and fare subsidy program.
In September of 2009, your board directed staff to develop a transit outreach and subsidy program that would be open to public and private employees, students, seniors, and members of the military by using a portion of our motor vehicle registration fees that we receive. APCD staff envisioned a countywide transit subsidy program open to all county mass transit providers, and that's exactly what occurred. In March of this year, your board authorized payment of $50,000 to Gold Coast Transit for implementation and operation of the proposed program. The purpose and goal of the outreach program was to see a measured increase in ridership with a targeted time-based promotional ticket giveaway tied to Earth Day events. Countywide, after distributing 30,000 free tickets, over 7,900 people actually took advantage of this one-time promotion, and awareness of public transit was generated throughout the community. The program also allowed transit agency to build new relationships with schools, large employers, nonprofits in their communities. The attached report also contains detail on the implementation of the program. That's all I have. We do have a representative from Gold Coast Transit here if there are questions.
Any questions?
Just one.
Mike?
I know you work closely with Darren sometime.
Yes.
Because it seems to fit into our BCTC, either offset a little for our budget or offset some for yours. If you don't have money in the future to do these kind of things, I guess we have to approve that. I think even BCTC's got to look at lost funds in the future too. So it's going to be a challenge. That's going to be another challenge for you to do this again.
Yes. Although it looks like for next fiscal year we'd have anywhere from 25 to 50,000 for a program such as this.
Okay.
If
We can look at it.
that was the board's pleasure.
We got to remember that on the board, guys. The BCTC board.
Mr. Chair, and if I'm reading the recommendation for future promotions, it clearly says that, I believe, it says that we need to have more funds to really put into it
That's what I'm talking about.
for the free ride to really gauge if it's successful in getting both new ridership and return ridership, correct?
That's true.
Yeah.
Good point. Any other questions? What's the pleasure of the board?
Move the approval.
Second.
We have a first, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Michael. And then the item 13 is receive and file the application for state subvention funds.
Move to recommend action.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we-
Any opposed?
Hope we get some.
Before we recess, can I have a question of Mike? Just one question
Yes.
for the board.
Michael?
Mike, we haven't heard anything from the Tri-Counties Board report like I used to give when we did our visits up there. Is there anything happening with the Tri-County?
Next meeting is scheduled for, I believe, January 17th off the top of my head.
Did we have any more meetings this
Yes, we
past-
did, and I need to include those minutes for you.
Right, because we'd like to know kind of what's going on with that board. I know we used to do it when I was on it. We'd
Yes.
get minutes on it. Okay.
Okay, our last item is public comments, and I don't have any cards for that. Is anybody in the public that wants to share anything with the board? If not, we're adjourned, and happy holidays.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great holiday. Thank you, staff, for all your work. Mike, thank you. Have a good
Thank you,
holiday.
Mike.
And ask county staff who have yet items on the agenda, let's see if we can plow through some things for the next 45 minutes. That'd be great.